For me, it was the first time as working on my own product. And the first days, you're like, what? So many users? And how do I manage all that? So you try to anticipate as many problems as you can. But when you get the real users, the real experience, then you see problems you haven't anticipated before.
Welcome to Mobile Growth Pancakes, a podcast by StoreMaven. We break down how and why mobile apps grow. In each episode, we invite a mobile growth expert onto the show to break down a specific mobile growth strategy, how it worked, why it worked, and what they would do differently. I'm your host, Esther Shatz.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Mobile Growth Pancakes. I'm your host, Jonathan Fishman. I'm VP Marketing at StoreMaven. And today with me, I have Guilhem Duché. He's the Chief Product Officer and co-founder of the Once app. It's a really cool dating app. Guilhem, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, my name is Guilhem. I'm French, as you can hear, with my French accent. I'm based in London. And I co-founded a dating app called Once 6 years ago. And we tried to be kind of the anti-Tinder. So instead of having to swipe all day long, we try to pick for you a set of cleverly chosen matches. So that's a marketing bias we have. I've been working on that for the last 6 years. And I have a tech background. So I joined as a founder, Android developer, and transformed myself into a product management role, which is a much different job.
It is. So what's unique about the app? It's you said that people can stop swiping all day long. I'm also asking for personal reasons. I might want to use it.
Yeah. So the main pitch is instead of swiping all day long, what we do is we send you a match pick for you every day. And when you receive your match, she receives you as a match as well. And if you like each other, then you can connect and chat. So that's the main feature of the app. So kind of a daily gamification. You know, everyone wants to see a good match every day. And on top of that, we built other features to drive engagement and satisfy as many users as possible. That's how we work.
Amazing. How did you guys, you and your co-founders, got the idea to start a dating app in such a competitive industry? Didn't it scare you a bit?
Yeah, so my CEO was already in the dating industry in the US. He launched some kind of a dating website, web app for universities. And he had a very a strong growth plan there that worked fairly well. And then he decided to go for a new adventure. And he was really thinking that people were so focused on quantity on Tinder, and there was some space for something different. And there were already a couple of apps in the US trying to take this path. And we thought we could do the same. At first, we wanted to launch in the US, but we decided we could be much stronger in Europe because we were all founders were French. So we focused on Europe because also with the resources we had, it was much easier to attack a European market because the US market is even more competitive and require even more resources. So we decided to focus on Europe, and things got way easier to launch in Europe.
That's a really smart decision in my view. Sorry. It's a really smart decision because everybody are looking at the US as like the top market, the tier one market. If you're a game developer, if you're an app developer, but it doesn't have to be like that. And I think that in dating, the cultural differences in dating, even within the US are insane. Like people date differently in the East and West Coast, and in Europe, for sure, people date differently. So it's a really smart decision to focus your efforts in a smaller market, but where you can have an edge.
Yeah. And I completely agree with you. Even outside of dating, I think people underestimate how big is the world, how many opportunities there are. There is spaces for plenty of concept, plenty of even if you want to go in the dating, even if it's it's a very competitive market. There is always something new, just because the habits change, the trends change. And Tinder is still the king, but in 5 years, probably it's going to change, someone will disrupt the market. And you also have like a smaller niche that works really well. It can be specific countries, it can be specific sexualities. And that's true for every industry. There is always space, and you might find your place easier if you focus less on the most competitive market.
Yeah, for sure. So let's go back to the launch. When did you guys launch?
So 6 years ago. First, we had the idea to launch in the US and prepare for the US launch. And in fact, we even pushed a bit, and I did some better acquisition on Pandora, for instance, in New York, and did some tests. And then at some point, we were like, okay, we need to go back to the drawing board and improve a bit the product and build a better team as well. We were kind of spread in France. So we decided to gather a team somewhere in Europe. So we picked London and changed a couple of key people in marketing, for instance. And we focused in Europe, first in France. The first reason for that is just we were all French. So there is like always some kind of affinity with your own culture. It's way easier for you to pitch, and also, in smaller countries like France, it's a good PR story, to talk about the newcomer, the new startup. So you kind of get some free PR for your launch, and you get better your message basically. And so we focused in launching in France, and we also hired the right people to use the different leverage we have. We had some resources. We had raised like 3 million euros at that time, and so for the launch, we decided to spend some money also on paid acquisition. So paid acquisition is something super tricky. You need a lot of expertise, and back then it was probably simpler than now. There was a bit less competition on performance marketing. So also spending the money wisely on Facebook helped us launch very well. So we mixed PR story, influencers, and paid acquisition to do a successful launch. And when you have this recipe, you have like a lot of users coming in. But then the journey starts. It's only a beginning. You start acquiring user. Like people tend to focus on the launch as something like a set date, and then if it doesn't work, then it's over. But it's not like that. You're gonna make a push, because when you launch, you want people to talk about you. But what's next? So what you have to build is not like, how do I make a launch? Is how do I get a constant flow of acquisition for good price? And so you have to think long term. Like, for sure, a launch is good, but what's next? What's next? So if you are not building a brand, if you are not building, I don't know, some brand awareness or sympathy for your brand, building a community, trying to keep your users, you're going to go nowhere. And on top of that, what you need is build a good marketing team. Even a marketing team is like a team of tech experts. Over time, tech grows. They get better using the technologies. They use better technologies. But it's the same for marketing team. You try new tools. You try new channels. You test new analytics tools to follow the user journey from the ads to spending in the app, and so this builds over time. So so when you launch, be patient, be resilient, and plan not for the short term, not only for the short term, but also for the long term.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot to unpack here. You talked about paid user acquisition.
Yeah.
We know it from a lot of launches out there, both in games and apps, that paid is extremely important when you launch, because first of all, it impacts your organic visibility. If you want to be ranked on the charts, especially in an insanely competitive category such as dating, you have to be ready with a significant user acquisition budget. The charts are basically ranked by the number of first-time downloads for any app. That's the most important metric. So unless you're able to get a lot of traction in the beginning, you won't get to the top of the charts. Then you have a much lower chance that the App Store editor team would notice you and feature you, and then you would appear in different curated lists. The second thing that you said that I think is really important, and we see more of these days, is using influencers when you start out. So how did that go for you, like using influencers? How did you go about finding influencers or knowing it's the right influencers, and what were the results of that?
Well, there's just a lot of, there's no magic, there's a lot of work behind this. So we had a full team of marketing. We used to have like one marketing guy per country. So he knows the culture of each country. And then you have to, shortlist who would be the good influencers, and reach out to them, propose a deal, and have a fair negotiation. It's difficult to put a price, on the video of an influencer. So you have to find a common ground, to evaluate a fair price. So you need to be used to track the impact of an influencer. So for that, you need some attribution tools, for instance. There's no magic, but the field has changed a bit right now. Now you have like some agencies of influencers. So like they gather plenty of influencers under one banner. So you can reach out to an agency and reach to several influencers. But that's at the end of the day, the content needs to be good. The targeting needs to be good. The measurement needs to be accurate to make sure you show the right people, and never see it as one shot. If you do one influencer one time, you may get like a 20K downloads, but what's next? So like always plan for longer term. So if you go for influencers, it's not like you can do a first step on a couple of influencers, but then how do I industrialize this process so I can renew my influencers and get a constant flow and build some kind of brand awareness, targeting the right influencer, the right audience, and get known. And this is a very long process. And I think we could have done better in this area, but we have some very good experience. Sometimes I remember in Brazil, we reached out to an Instagram influencer, and we have like I don't know. I think it was something like just a 100K of downloads just from the one right influencer. It was the cheapest paid acquisition we had ever. So you can have good surprise. There's no limit of what we can do with influencers. But now I think also, as I said, like the field has evolved, and influencers know their power more than before. And so now you even have, like before you were contacting the influencer, now you have an influencer or someone working for the influencer reaching out to you saying, hey, this guy, he can talk about your app. It's very competitive, and when you do paid acquisition, and it's even more true for influencers, you need to measure, you need to measure the impact, you need to measure the ROI, and that's something quite tricky to put in place in a large scale app, having an accurate measurement of the impact of a campaign like that.
Yeah, for sure. Especially now with the new privacy guidelines by Apple and everything, which makes attribution, at least traditional direct attribution, tough. But that brings me to the point of building a brand, which is the third thing that you said, which I think is extremely important for an app. And I truly love your view on the fact that the launch is just the beginning. It's just a start. It's not trying to engineer like a huge spike in installs and that's it. As you said, what's next? So making a process out of the things that worked. But influencers, in my opinion, is also an amazing way to build a brand, because one of the things we measure for a lot of apps and games, the impact of influencer marketing. And one of the things that we see is a pretty crazy increase in the amount of branded search in the App Store and in the Google Play Store. People start knowing your brand name and searching for it because they don't necessarily tap on the link in the influencer video or on whatever app it was. So did you guys see that kind of increase in like people start searching for a brand?
Yeah, we tried to measure that because at some point we had some TV ads in France. We also had some offline marketing campaigns, like in the Tube in Paris. And that's the thing. Like as soon as you go out of the digital world, everything gets much more complicated to measure. So, but what we could observe is that when you gather like TV ads plus tube ads plus maybe radio, things like that, you're gonna see just globally your CPA reduce a little bit, you know. But the overall measurement is going to be very, very difficult. So you will see your acquisition cost decrease because your brand awareness is going to increase, and you will get basically a bit more organic downloads because like you can't really measure someone who just saw your ads in the tube. If I remember correctly, he has to see it like 7 or 14 times in average to go to a download after. So like, how do you know that someone who saw your ads is going to download? It's almost impossible to measure. And I remember like years ago in a conference, someone an expert in mobile acquisition, especially for gaming, and he said like, if you want to go offline, like that's the last resort. Like do everything you can do online, and the meaning behind like do everything you can do where you can measure. Because if you can measure, you can optimize. So if you want to go out that, you already have like a solid business model. And even like we jump quickly into paid acquisition, but not everyone can afford to pay for acquisition. And I think like people have to realize that when you start to really spending a lot of money in your paid acquisition, like your product should be already quite solid. And not only in terms of pure product, but also in terms of BI, you know, be able to measure. Like it's really critical. Like you can spend money on Facebook; it's very easy, but spend it like wisely. It's very difficult, and you need to have experts to lead that. So don't focus on paid acquisition right away. You know, you can have probably cheaper acquisition being a bit smart. Optimize your product, optimize your LTV. And ramp up your paid acquisition. If you just jump into paid acquisition, the risk is you're going to spend badly your money, and you're going to ruin yourself. Basically.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point because it's kind of it's two forces that countering each other. On the one hand, you want to get the most visibility and brand and installs at the end of the day. But if you're an app and you're preparing for a launch and you raised a few $1 million or euros, you have like one shot basically. And today, from a user perspective, today's market is also extremely competitive. People don't have a lot of patience for products that don't give them a great experience. So if you spend all this money and then, okay, you got these installs, but your retention sucks, it's going to be very difficult to acquire back these lapsed users. And you already spent your ammunition, as I call it. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, and you pinpoint something clever as well, is that when you raise money, you raise expectations as well. So you raise say 3 million euros, so you have to deliver results. So you are in a growth phase, so you need to grow. And in fact, the tools you may need take some time either to set up, to master. So yeah, when you run into acquisition, make sure you have the right people to set that up and to spend that money, because you can use tools that are that already exist that are going to help you tremendously. But you may have to build things that are custom. So those tools are very complex. We are talking about tools like Adjust, AppsFlyers, for instance, specialized in attribution, and those are linked with plenty of acquisition channels. Facebook, Google, TikTok, Snapchat, and you name it. You have hundreds of them. And in fact, for each app, the best performing channel may change. We may get good result on Facebook, but some will get better result on Snapchat because the targeting is better. And testing all these channels, it's not only a matter of tech setup. It's also a matter of time. You need to produce content to test ads on Snapchat, to test ads on TikTok, and detect which marketing channel is the best. So hoping that in 3 months you're going to deliver amazing paid acquisition. No, it's not going to happen. It's not like that unless you hire experience in your team.
Yeah, unless it's not your first rodeo. You did a few launches before.
And another thing to mention that was interesting, I completely agree with you that the impact of paid acquisition on the store visibility is quite important. And some people think that part of the reason the IDFA thing happened to iOS is to take control over the traffic because there was so many paid acquisition that the editor choice of Apple was not having as much impact as before. And I completely agree with you. And what we observed, I would say that we didn't really focus much on ASO at the beginning. And even and last year we put more effort into this. And when you run a lot of paid acquisition like we do, we spend always more than 100K monthly, for instance. And the thing is, the ASO impact can be marginal. You can't really measure an impact of ASO. So we are working with 2 experts in the field, and we were analyzing the data that they could get. I work with App Follow-Up Radar, for instance, and the impact of ASO was quite marginal compared to the impact of the paid acquisition.
Yeah, for sure.
And it depends on the field, but that's the way it is in the dating industry. And you're right, the dating industry has a lot of paid acquisition, and if you can't compete at least with a bit with the money, it's going to be very difficult at some point.
Yeah.
But there is always a way to disrupt and bring something new. But it's getting, I think, more and more difficult. A lot of big brands. We think they come from a nice startup story, and most of the time there are big groups behind that are willing to spend tens of millions for years to build the brand, and then they put the paywalls, and when they have the brand, they put the paywall and get the money.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of ASO, we're a company that did a lot of app store optimization work, both. We test basically product pages to find the most converting creatives. And we did a lot of work in the dating space, mostly with these the large groups that you mentioned. I think that the impact of ASO is, I wouldn't recommend somebody that is just founded an app, for example, to put a lot of efforts on ASO just from the get-go. There's a lot of other things that they should focus on. First of all, building an amazing product. Without that, nothing will work.
Well, there are 2 sides in the ASO, and I think so there is keyword optimization, try to get a good rank. That's one thing. And I think this one, if you have paid acquisition, it's kind of difficult to improve. But the store page optimization is something that is always relevant, whether you are small, big, and running paid acquisition. And I know on our side, I think at some point we kind of lose faith in that. But recently we made a recent test, and sometimes the design can have and the way you show off your value proposition can have a big impact, and the conversion of your store page can be always optimized.
Yeah, I can tell you from I got a front row seat to see these kind of things. I was lucky, but changes in the creatives of dating app, I saw different variations of it that can increase conversion rates by double-digit %, which is both, it affects the paid user acquisition side. It lowers the cost of your cost per install, basically. And on the organic side, it has a huge effect as well. You get a lot more installs for the traffic that you get from search and from users browsing the App Store and seeing your app in different lists or the Today tab or in Google, the curated recommendations.
Another thing you mentioned that is, I think is interesting because I want to give another view on that is, being featured.
Did you go for featuring? Like, did you try to talk to?
Yeah, we had some featurings, whether it's on the Play Store, on the App Store, on some occasions, on our main app or secondary app, on specific countries or not. And like, there are some industry where it's magical and it's gonna bring like so much downloads. For us, it's good, it's gonna lower slightly the acquisition cost. But what we observe is that we are a dating app, so it's not because someone like can see your app much better that he's gonna want to date, So at the end of the day, when we were featured, we could see the conversion of our store page dramatically decrease because, like, okay, more people see this page,
of
but
course,
they don't want to date.
They don't have the context.
The number of sign-up was almost not changing, and I think now, at least for the Play Store, they are doing things much more cleverly and try to target audience that are likely to date, but like, don't always expect. It's a bit like what I said before. Like, it's like a PR launch. Like, don't expect that thanks to featuring, the life will be good and you will get downloads forever. Featuring, it's a download and visibility for a few days, and after that, what?
Yeah.
So it helps. You're gonna get up in the higher in the stores, and I think it's particularly good for gaming, for instance. But on specific industries where people have to engage quite a lot, like signing up, sharing pictures of themselves, it's not completely magical,
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Specifically for apps on launch, I mean, as you said, if users don't have the right state of mind and they're not coming in with the context they need in order to find value in your app, and of course for dating is people have to be single most of the time. I want to imagine, but for games, for example, it's much more broad. There are a lot more people play games than people that date. Or if it's a different app, I don't know, an app to transfer money. Somebody he has to have the problem of, I need to transfer money somehow. I'm looking for a solution in order to find value in that. So when there's a featuring on the Today tab and every App Store visitor sees that, the vast majority won't be interested. So the conversion rates there are much lower. So I just want to think. I want to go back to that launch. How did it go? I mean, you did all of these things, and what happened? You always say, "What's next?" So what happened next for you guys?
Well, the first days, like for me, it was the first time as working on my own product, and the first days you're like, what? So many users. And how do I manage all that? So there was a big phase, in the first months where we had to build, because it was really like, the startup launch, like things were not like square everywhere. We had to cut corners on plenty of things, whether it's on tech, on product, on marketing. And then you have to face like plenty of users and you face new problems. You try to anticipate as many problems as you can. But when you get the real users, the real experience, then you see problems you haven't seen, you haven't anticipated before. So at that time, we were doing like full manual moderation of every single profile. So we had too many users, so we had to reorganize the way we would moderate the profiles, hire more people, and also we realized that we develop our app with a specific mindset, imagining what is the user journey, what the user expects. And you realize quickly that you have no feedback, in fact. You are in your office, you push an app on the store, and you can't talk to your users, they are somewhere in France, downloading the app. You provide them a match every day. So you realize that, in fact, you need plenty of KPIs to follow. And even before KPIs, the first thing we realize is, I think we have an issue. We have a crash somewhere. So we have plenty of tools to detect the crash, but we couldn't really know what was happening. So we opened a channel to talk to our users. So I fought with my CEO and I said, we need a customer support, and we need to talk to our users. because otherwise the only thing you have is review, and at that time I'm not sure you could even answer on the reviews, and the reviews is not a good place to have a chit chat, with your users. So it was very early, and I just set up a customer support. We put in the app, a way to contact us in the app. And when you have thousands of users, you're gonna have like 50 people contacting you, giving feedbacks on something that is not working or what are their expectations. And it's tough. You get the hard truth. So based on that,
what kind of feedback you guys got after the launch?
Oh, well, the hard truth is people are difficult, So
people
you try to pick a good match for them, and sometimes you have people coming as, "Do you really think that girl is good for me?" And you look at the girl, the girl is cute. Like, what is he complaining about, And sometimes you're like, "Oh, yeah, maybe we should improve our process and finding a better match, So and people are so difficult, and people get so angry, and people expect so much for free, So it really help us have a better understanding of what was happening out there. And at first, I think the first channel was, as I said, customer support. And then the second thing is KPIs everywhere. So for sure, if you want to lead your team, you have to focus on 3-4 KPIs, not more. Otherwise, it gets difficult to follow. And so many KPIs are linked in some way. So if you try to follow plenty of them, you will look for correlation. It's going to be complex. So when you lead your team, you should focus on 3-4 KPIs. But KPIs can be used for many other things. Just understand what is happening in your app. So at first, as I said, I have a tech background. I was making mobile apps for plenty of clients before, and everyone was asking me, "Oh, you have to put analytics." And they wanted analytics just because they were told, "Oh, you need analytics." But I never met any client who had any clue what to do with an analytics. And what we did with our app is we did the same. I think we need analytics. We put analytics, and at first we didn't know how to leverage those.
Nobody explores the data and starts looking at it.
No, nobody explores. And when we started to have some scale, I was like, but maybe I can know what is happening at scale if I look at the analytics, and I try to understand what's happening when I launch a new feature. Can I follow the deployment of that feature? So over time, we build better and better tools to follow KPIs, to activate features on subset of users, for instance, to measure things on subset of users before rolling out to everyone. And as I said, it was my first product, and I wish I had known all that beforehand, because we would have built a much better BI stack and analytics tools. And nowadays you have amazing tools. Also you can find online. Some of them are very expensive, but even Google Analytics it's crappy to use, but it's kind of powerful. So it's worth investing sometimes in analytics.
So if you go back in time and you would do one thing differently, would it be building the data stack and analytics earlier?
Yes, definitely. Cool. That's really something people underestimate what you can get. And it's not only a simple matter of conversion, it's just understanding what's happening, and fact checking that what you would expect is indeed happening when you launch a new feature. When you have some kind of outage, you can see one KPI decreasing and say, "Oh, if this event is not triggered as much as usual, maybe I have a tech issues here." And sometimes it's not even tech issues. Sometimes it's UX issues. You make something with a designer, you made the assumption that it was going to work, you ship that quickly, and then, oh, fuck, they don't understand, they don't click the right button. And you think that this kind of error are dummy errors, but in fact, no. Sometimes it's kind of mind-blowing when you think that you build something thinking it's going to work this way, people will react this way, and in fact, it's most of the time it's not the case. When you develop, you create an image of what is your standard users.
Yeah, I think I mean, I think you touched on a really good point, and I think we'll wrap that discussion with this because we're running out of time. But when you launch, all you have is an hypothesis or a few hypotheses altogether. Exactly. It's on the product and it's also on the marketing side, because we talked about the marketing components of a launch. And again, when you launch, you have an hypothesis. You have no idea if that influencer would bring you 100K installs or 3K.
And you have an hypothesis on your user behavior or your user targeting.
And the user targeting, of course. And without data or the infrastructure to basically track these KPIs over time, with context, like understand the timeline of when you did something and what was the holistic impact of it, both on the product, but on the marketing side as well, it's extremely hard. And one of the problems there that we're trying to solve at StormHaven, and we actually have a product called Polar Beam that is helping marketers understand the impact of their mobile marketing activities, whether it's featuring a TV ad, something offline, a new channel with paid acquisition, and how it affects all channels, both organic and paid. How does it affect branded search, for example? And measuring it and basically validating your hypotheses, what's working and what's not, so you can double down on what's working and stop doing what's not. So I think it's extremely important. And to solve the problem of, you mentioned when you have analytics at the beginning, nobody can work with it. You either need people that know SQL, or you need data scientists sometimes if it's like a ton of data, and you need people that know how to work with data. And these platforms are not that easy to use. You have to be an expert with data. So the things that we're trying to solve with our analytics product is basically democratizing data, giving people a very easy to use interface. So anyone without knowing how to code, they don't know Python, they don't know SQL, they can still analyze data, understand what's going on, and measure with a pretty good accuracy the impact of the different activities, be it a new version or a new, starting to advertise on Snapchat. So that's really important. Cool. So before we end this, I actually have one more point that we might. Sure. Are you familiar with custom product pages, by the way? There's with iOS 15, there's the ability to have different.
No, we haven't tried it yet. No.
It's not out yet, but it's going to be out pretty soon. And just talking about ASO and the launches of apps in the future, imagine that in the launches of the future, you'd be able to launch with a campaign that is targeting women and a campaign that is targeting men. And in dating, it's really easy. I mean, there's different groups and there's LGBTQ, but in general, you can craft a product page that works for men and a product page that works for women and for different preferences. And that's a new possibility. So that would be really interesting for you guys to check out as it comes out. But for launches, it would make that even more targeted.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Like you could already do that, per country on the Play Store. But the way Apple is bringing it is very interesting, and I see for the marketing team that there is a good leverage and a bit more work for the marketing. Like people undervalue the work of marketing and how long it is like to. As I said, it's a long process and testing, and it's a permanent process.
Cool. So before we'll end, I just want to ask you one question we ask all guests, which is the name of the podcast is Mobile Growth and Pancakes. So I have to ask, what is your favorite pancake? What flavor? I'm also hearing a lot of answers from different countries, so it's interesting what goes in France.
That's a good question.
Or is it crepe? Do you eat crepes?
Yeah, we eat crepe. In the region of France where I'm from, we eat crepe. And I think a simple one with butter, sugar, is always the best.
And lemon. Add lemon.
And lemon.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I think with the lemon, it's amazing.
Yeah. Awesome. That's awesome to hear. Cool. So thank you very much for joining us today. It was a real pleasure. And I'll speak to you soon.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And that was Mobile Growth and Pancakes. To find out more about StormHaven and how we can improve App Store performance, visit stormhaven.com. And then make sure to search for Mobile Growth and Pancakes in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found, and click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at StormHaven, thanks for listening.